And then there were the several times the tree was transplanted. Everyone knows that when a tree is transplanted, it undergoes a sort of shock as it adjusts itself to the new soil and container. Sometimes the tree was transplanted for no apparent reason, and sometimes it was because the container was bigger and nicer. But each time it was transplanted, the gardener never seemed to hang around and nurse it through the new conditions. All of these challenges combined to make for very difficult growing conditions for the tree. Between the poor soil conditions, the many different gardeners, none of whom stuck around very long, and the several times that it was transplanted, the poor tree would frequently drop its leaves, and everyone wondered if it was going to survive at all. But despite the harsh conditions, the tenacious little tree dug its roots deep into the soil and refused to die. It never seemed to grow very tall, but it continued to hang in there. One day, about 10.5 years ago, a man happened to stumble upon the tree and decided to try his hand at gardening. He wasn't very skilled at all, but he never claimed to be skilled. But even though he wasn't a highly skilled gardener, he had two things in common with the tree. First of all, he was stubborn. He was just about as stubborn as the little tree was. The stubborn little tree seemed determined to survive despite the odds, and the gardener was just as determined to make sure it did. For the first several years, people would frequently ask him if he wasn't ready to give up on the tree. All the other gardeners had moved on after 2 or 3 years. But eventually, people quit asking him when he would be leaving, because it was apparent after 5 years, and then after 10 years, that he was here to stay. No doubt about it, the tree had met its match when it came to stubborn attitudes. But the other reason that he seemed to be a good match was because he knew how to love. He may not have been skilled in a lot of things, but he could love. And that's what the tree needed more than anything else in the world. It needed a gardener to care for it and nurture it and love it. And when the tree received love, it was able to give love in return. And so finally, after many years of surviving, the tree began to thrive. Oh, it still has its challenges. The soil is still just as harsh as ever. And the city is still a small city, which means that resources are limited. But not only are its roots now firmly embedded within the earth, but there is new growth beginning to appear on the branches. It's hard to say what the future holds for this determined little tree. As I said, Texas has a reputation for rather large mountain cedar types of trees. And so with the proper care, it may grow into a large and noble tree like the one described by the prophet Ezekiel. Or it may be the sort of tree that doesn't grow very tall, but instead spreads its branches over a large territory. It's hard to say, but it will be interesting to see what's in store for it. Friends, this church, Central Texas MCC, is that tree. And you are all a part of it. Some of you are the roots which anchor it into the ground, providing support for it during the difficult years. Some of you are the bark on the tree trunk. You're able to endure the harsh elements, and you provide protection for more vulnerable parts of the tree. Some of you are the leaves of the tree. You receive the light of God, and you feed and nourish the rest of the tree with the Word of God. Some of you are the blooms on the tree. Your very presence attracts others to the tree. Some of you are the fruit of the tree, and yes, even the nuts. And God has created you and called you to feed the world. We are all part of the strange and wonderful tree that has been planted in this unlikely spot called Waco. And God has plans for us. The words God spoke through the prophet Jeremiah sum it up well. For surely I know the plans I have for you, says God. Plans for your welfare and not for harm, to give you a future with hope. And friends, you are a part of that future and hope. Happy anniversary, and amen.